and welcome back. This is step 3 of the series to rehydrate dried sourdough starter. So whether you were gifted dried sourdough starter or if you bought mine from my Etsy shop, these are the steps that you're going to need to rehydrate your sourdough starter and get it active and bubbly and all ready to bake bread. So this is step 3. Like I said, the first 2 steps are linked in the description if you want to start from the beginning and just double check your steps, or if you're new to it and you want to start from the beginning, there's your option. So the first step was super easy. Just put your sourdough chips in with some water and let it sit. The second step was even easier. You just added some flour to it. Now the third step, maybe a little bit tricky, but really not compared to the first 2 steps. You're going to have a little extra thing to add to it, but it's nothing serious. All you're going to need is some flour and some water. Again, the flour is all-purpose flour. Any brands will work. I have used numerous brands when I feed my sourdough starter. I use different brands. It's never the most expensive brand. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It just depends. It's the store brand. It's any brand of all-purpose flour you want. And that's what I love about my sourdough starter, is that I have made it such a user-friendly, budget-friendly bread that you can use any brand of flour and still get an amazing loaf of bread. I have worked and tried years and years at perfecting this starter so that it's not complicated and it's super easy and anybody can do it. Because my goal is for you to love baking sourdough bread and to send me pictures of all the loaves of bread that you bake using my sourdough starter. That would make me so happy. I just want it to be user-friendly, and I don't want it to be complicated or frustrated. And trust me, I have tried numerous starters in years past where it was so frustrating and overwhelming. I had to buy specialty flours, and I just ended up throwing it away because it never worked until I perfected this simple one that anybody can do. And I promise you, you will get fantastic breads, fantastic results, and you will love it. So without further ado, let's get started with step number 3. I will zoom in to show you what you should be looking for after step 2, which was just the basic first feeding. So this is another feeding that we're going to do. After your step 2, which is the first feeding, you should have let your sourdough starter just sit on your countertop for at least 24 hours. Again, it's all going to be dependent on the temperature of your kitchen or wherever you have it. If it's hot, it's going to go a little bit quicker. If it's cold, it's going to take a little bit longer. When I put the hours and the time frame on the directions, that's just a benchmark. It could take longer, it could take shorter. The whole thing is to not be so much dependent on the time, but really more focus on the look of your starter, the look and feel of the doughs that you're going to be making, and also the smell. So with sourdough, it's going to smell sour and fermented, and that's what you want. So you're going to pay more attention to those 3 things, mostly the look of it and the feel of it, more importantly than the smell. Those are the most important things. So the time frame, it's just there for guidance as a benchmark. Don't worry if it takes you longer. Don't worry if it takes you shorter. If it takes you longer, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's all trial and error. Every kitchen is different, and that's what's truly going to make your sourdough. So let's zoom in. Again, all you're going to need is 1 ounce of all-purpose flour and 1 ounce of warm water. And that's it. We're not going to discard anything. We're just going to add it too. So let's zoom in and I'll show you what you should be seeing in your jar. Okay, so you should have had your sourdough starter sitting on the counter for 24 hours. We're just going to take it off. And don't be alarmed if you see fruit flies, because it is a sour thing. Just like sour fruits and vegetables, it does attract fruit flies, and depending on the time of year, you might see some, and that's perfectly okay. Sometimes they even get in there. But this is what you want to look for. You can see how bubbly it is, and you can also see on the side of the jar how there is some sourdough residue on the side. So that means it rose up about to this level and then dropped down. And that's perfectly normal, and that's what's going to happen whether this first feeding and more feedings afterwards. That's what's going to happen. But it is bubbly, and it does have a slight fermented smell to it. Not super strong like it will get over time, but it does have a slight fermented smell to it. So to this, we're not going to take anything out. We're going to grab our kitchen scale if you have one, which is recommended. It's linked below. And we're going to add to it just 1 ounce of flour, or 29 grams. Again, any brand of all-purpose flour will work. We're just going to add that right into it. And then we're also going to add in 1 ounce of warm water, not scorching hot, but lukewarm water. And we're going to add that into it also. And then with our rubber spatula, you're just going to stir it up, making sure that there are no dry bits in the bottom of the jar and along the side. You're going to try and scrape off the side as much as you can, and then just get it in there. It's going to resemble like a thick pancake batter, and that's the ideal consistency that you're going to want from here on out whenever you feed your sourdough. So once you got that done, you just scrape off as much as you can off your spatula. Don't try and leave it on the side of the jar like that, because it will dry out. Unless you want to gift it to somebody over time, then you can. But just try and keep it all in there unless you want it to dry out. So then you're going to add your cover, whether you're using a jar cover from my Etsy shop, a piece of cloth, or some plastic wrap. Just going to place it over there. Cover it up with a rubber band so that it has some airflow, and then you're going to let it sit on your counter in a warm place for about 8 to 12 hours. Again, this is all dependent on how warm your room is, whether you leave it on your kitchen counter by your oven or anywhere else. It all depends on that. So again, you're going to see it bubble up, you're going to see it rise and then lower down, and that's perfectly normal. So let this sit somewhere nice and comfy for about 8 to 12 hours, and then come back and see step 4.